Well, hello there. Welcome to Lunch for the Soul. I'm Melissa Wilson, morning anchor as well as medical reporter for Fox 26 News in Houston. Today, we're going to be talking lupus. It is a lot more common than you may even realize. And I am going to be with two women today who really are on a serious campaign about awareness. And that is because so many people go year after year after year without getting an important diagnosis, which means they're not getting the treatment they need. So here we go with some information that could not only help you, but perhaps somebody you love. If maybe somebody's having some odd symptoms and can't figure out what's wrong, maybe they should look into lupus. So joining me right now is Cheryl. Hello there, as well as Anne Marie, who's with the Lupus Foundation. Welcome to you both.
Hey, thanks for having us.
I tell you what, you have a serious campaign going on here to raise awareness, and with reason. It took you 17 years to get that diagnosis, Cheryl. How frustrating was it to never understand what was happening to your body?
Yes, and several major crises, including a stroke, serious liver damage, kidney damage, issues with my heart and lungs over and over again, and never finding the root cause. So those things were happening to me were actually symptoms of what lupus was doing to my body, but no one ever looked for the underlying cause of why there was one major issue after another.
And let's talk about some of those symptoms that you had, because you had some life-threatening medical problems. I'm going to call them a medical crisis, one after another. Did it all start with a stroke?
Yes, the stroke was the first thing that happened. I was only 28 years old, and it's not typical for someone 28 to have a stroke for any reason. And the doctors did extensive tests to try to figure out what happened. And when they couldn't, they just decided, oh, it must be birth control. So they removed my birth control. I ended up hemorrhaging, needing a hysterectomy. Following that, developed a massive abscess and a very serious septic infection. And from that point on in my life, I had one major difficulty after another. 10 years after that, I was very, very sick, lost a massive amount of weight, and found out that I had stage 3 liver fibrosis. I wasn't drinking alcohol. It wasn't cirrhosis. It was major liver damage. And we didn't know why or what had caused it. So it was determined to be a non-alcoholic liver condition, and there really wasn't a whole lot of treatment. And my liver doctor at the time encouraged me to exercise, try to get as strong as I could. And I ultimately ended up running the Boston Marathon that year, and in denial, complete denial that I was ill.
It is remarkable that, and not only that, but you have been involved with the Lupus Foundation a lot as well too, haven't you?
Yes, absolutely. So to give my journey some purpose, I decided, when I really understood how there was a lack of awareness, that I should get involved and do all I can, not only on the fundraising side, but helping other folks who are going through similar situations with this difficult journey.
And here you are running. That had to feel so good to pull that off. I want to talk about some other crazy things you went through, things that no one has even heard of, like bleeding breasts. It sounds so scary, where your doctor said, we don't even know how to treat you. Multiple bowel obstructions, debilitating joint pain where you couldn't get out of bed. I mean, you've been through a lot.
Right. And there's so many times where it's so easy to just give up and give in. You can't take anymore. And honestly, prior to the diagnosis, it was even more overwhelming and discouraging, because I would think, what is going on? What's next? What's around the corner? How do we explain it? How do we treat it? Who do I call? Those were the challenges.
And you have a supporting family. That has to make a huge difference in all of this for you, I would think.
Oh, absolutely. My grandchildren give me a reason to get up and keep going and be excited, and something to look forward to. And thank God I've always had something in my life that kind of keeps me going, and a great support system.
Oh, and so precious. What a beautiful blessing they are. Well, let's bring in, and let me get rid of this so we can see your beautiful face better, Anne Marie, to talk more about this, because it's a problem because it is much more prevalent than people probably realize, right? But it does take most people years. How long does it typically take? Probably not 17 years like it did Cheryl, right?
Well, I wish I could say that that would be an exception. However, it does take between 7 and about 15 years on average to get a diagnosis with lupus. Unfortunately, the range varies depending on if you happen to be white or if you happen to be black or brown. So people of color, unfortunately, it does take a much longer time to get the diagnosis. There are about 1.5 million people in the United States living with lupus today, with many, many more still yet to be diagnosed, thousands that do get diagnosed every year. And unfortunately, even some lupus warriors lose their battles every year.
Can you talk more about why it's disproportionate between races? That certainly doesn't seem fair, but what's causing that? And more importantly, as a community, what can we do to change that?
Is always to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I feel very strongly that the more we can talk about lupus, what the symptoms look like and how they present, the more we can help people get to their diagnosis faster. Now, in some communities, it's a little bit more challenging to get to the doctor. So as hard as Cheryl's journey is, and she is still on her journey, Cheryl is really lucky not only to have the support system she has. Cheryl is lucky because she can get to the doctors, the specialists, and she can afford all the medicines. So there are a lot of barriers about getting the diagnosis that have to do with access to healthcare, access to specialists, access to high quality healthcare. And then we, of course, have to look at unintentional bias when we're talking about going to the doctor. If someone is in their 30s and presents with severe pain, severe joint pain, and fatigue, and they're white versus being black, how will they be perceived by their physician? Will someone who is black be perceived as drug seeking while someone who is white be given more tests? So there are a lot of different barriers, but unfortunately, some of the ones that we can do something about is to talk about it in the community. Encourage people to talk about their symptoms. Hair loss is a whopper, and the butterfly rash across the face will have some scaling, and what might present like eczema, severe eczema, could actually be a symptom of lupus.
Cheryl, did you ever have that typical butterfly rash on your face?
Oh, yes. And I still get it when I'm having a flare up. It takes a lot of makeup to hide it. And it's very pronounced, and it looks a little bit different on everybody, but yes.
But it seems like that's a giveaway. If that happens, then why would it be a guessing matter if this is lupus? Did it come later, or what happens with that?
The biggest challenge is there is not a single test to diagnose lupus. So there is a test called ANA, which diagnoses autoimmune disease. But if you test positive, it absolutely doesn't mean you have lupus. You could have Hashimoto's or Sjogren's or ulcerative colitis or Crohn's. There are many different things that test positive for. So you need to meet specific criteria to ultimately get a lupus diagnosis. And this is one of the biggest challenges. So, your doctor will look at your medical history, examine you, look at your labs and say, okay, you have a positive ANA. You could have any one of many autoimmune diseases. And then it's about, okay, this person's had a stroke. This person has a blood clotting issue. This person has any number of things. And it's a certain number of those things that results in a positive diagnosis. And that's part of the challenge.
And Cheryl talked about it for a moment, but with treatment, let's walk through what you do, because it's a lot. You invited me into your home and I enjoyed that so much. But I mean, you have a basket full of meds, and some of them put you in bed for a bit, right?
Oh, absolutely. So included in the mix, and I only mention this because folks understand it, is chemo. And I inject myself with chemo weekly. I have an infusion every 2 weeks. One I do in my own home. The other has to be done in a doctor's office due to side effects of that. There's a lot of nausea and vomiting type symptoms that go along with this treatment. There are also the major drug today that really treats the autoimmune issues and the inflammation that attacks our organs is prednisone. That comes with a whole host of negative, really difficult side effects, including osteoporosis. I've had broken bones in my spine, broken ribs, broken teeth, diabetes. So you take enough prednisone and you just by default have diabetes. So some of these symptoms are brought on by those meds or the lack thereof better treatment.
And you have been through so much, but yet most of the time have a smile on your face. So I want to talk about how you do that. I feel like no matter what anybody might be going through right now, they could benefit from you. For one thing, dogs make a big difference in your life. And I got to meet your fur babies and I am in love. I miss them. I need visitation rights.
Absolutely. And my dogs are trained to be therapy dogs. And I bring them, I can't do this anymore because of COVID, but prior to COVID, I would bring them to visit others to bring them that same joy that they bring me.
Oh, they are just so precious. And then you get to go to, is it nursing homes and things like that to help make
Nursing
other,
homes.
yeah.
We went to schools after some major tragic events. We would bring the dogs to comfort folks, airports, hospitals. And to me, that give back and being able to do something for someone else has taught me more about life than I ever learned in the business world. I thought I would miss my career so much, but in that moment that I was forced to really think about life differently and what I could do, I made some changes and these dogs were part of that. They're rescues. They're all rescues as well. So I'm very involved with the rescue community for golden retrievers specifically. So we rescue the dogs, train the dogs, take them on therapy visits. And I'm hoping very soon it will be safe enough for me to go back to that. But in the meantime, fundraising for the Lupus Foundation, doing websites for nonprofits that need help. That's something I could do from home that's safe. And I have found that the things that I do to give back just make me feel so good.
Yeah,
So
it makes a big difference. And then you do fun stuff in your yard too. You have an incredible yard
yep.
and a beautiful garden. How does that help you? And you even make your own honey with your beehives. That was fun to witness.
Yeah. And so when I was working, I traveled 6 days a week. I had a house that was painted all one color in a backyard that was really boring and not inviting. And so when I realized that I had to stay home, I decided I wanted to make a little special world for myself. And so I started gardening, and like everything I do, I kind of took it to the next level and kept going and going. Then ultimately decided that I wanted my own bees to support the issue with bees that's going on around. They're becoming in that category of animals that we don't have enough of, insects that we don't have enough of for pollination. And so I started beekeeping and have my own little world out there that I enjoy and I like to share with others.
It is a peaceful place, let me tell you. I love it so much. I want to talk about how people can afford the treatment because it can be outrageous, even up to $20,000 a year, Cheryl. How do people deal with that? How can they pay that? Most people can't afford that no matter what they make.
I think the key going forward is going to be clinical trials. Yeah. So I mentioned prednisone earlier. It's a horrible drug with horrible side effects, but it is affordable and it's where the treatment starts. And there are a couple of other cost-effective things. But what we're trying to do with the Lupus Foundation is bring people into trials where they're doing some new, very creative things with the hope of diminishing their reliability on drugs like prednisone.
Anne Marie, are you seeing some movement in this in the right direction of trying to make everything more affordable?
We're very fortunate that there have been a few new drugs for lupus in the last couple of years. For the last 40 years, there were just the two, including hydroxychloroquine and, of course, the steroids or prednisone. But there are currently 7 clinical trials in Houston that we are aware of, and that is just at one clinical trial organization. So we do strongly encourage our warriors to look into them to see if that is something that they are willing to support with their own opportunities with their disease. There are SLE, which is the primary form of lupus trials. There's also CLE trials, which is the cutaneous form of lupus. And what those trials will do is not only cover all of their treatment and medicines and travel and all of that, but they work in tandem with their general care team. So if you have a lupus diagnosis, you likely have a primary care physician, a rheumatologist, a dermatologist, a nephrologist, maybe an immunologist and a cardiologist. All of those people remain in your treatment care program along with the team on the trial. The goal is to help find new medicines that can impact more people rather than just the current 4 that we have that are just really treating the symptoms of lupus rather than treating the disease itself.
So at this point, even though it's that expensive, it's still not a cure.
There is no cure for lupus. What we work to do at the foundation is advocate for not only our warriors, our lupus warriors like Cheryl. We also advocate for those who are new to their diagnosis. Cheryl, again, is very instrumental in helping be a mentor for new lupus warriors on their journey. We also help by providing funds and access to high quality healthcare. So for those that are at risk of losing their insurance, we have options for them. For those that have insurance, but the deductibles and the outside costs are still very high, and that $20,000 is with insurance, we have a grant program that allows us to help ensure that no warrior has to go without their medicines.
It's so nice to hear that. That's huge. And another important part of your awareness campaign to make sure people know that they can get help if they reach out and find the right people. Cheryl, we're running out of time. What is your advice to anybody who's going through this journey? I think the thing that I want to tell them that I've seen in you is just finding something that makes you happy, like the beautiful bees that you have here. I mean, bees might not be for everybody, but finding your thing, like the gardening. How important is it to find your place in life and keep your mind off of what you're going through?
So we all need purpose, right? So give some purpose to the journey. And, I really feel like I beat lupus every day with the work I do for the Lupus Foundation, because that's where I can make a difference for this. I'm not the person that was us in Washington, D.C. On the Hill talking about lupus. I'm not the person who's going to find a cure, but if I can help someone else, then I've made a difference. This was the Lupus Gala a couple of years ago, and these are my 2 best friends who are the ones who keep me going when I'm ready to give up. So find your support network. That's me and Donna this year on her birthday. I can't say enough about how grateful I am for the support that I have. Find the people in your life who truly love you and help them understand what you're going through.
You are such a brave, beautiful woman. I love you being so open and honest about all you've been through to help other people. Anne Marie, your last thoughts for everybody?
Talk about lupus. If you have it, if you know someone who has it, if it runs in your family, talk about lupus, get treatment. And if someone you know has lupus and looks as great as Cheryl does, try to remember she's actually battling right now.
Yeah, right now as we speak. But look at her, she's here talking. And Cheryl, you told me that most of your friends, your colleagues never knew the bucket of medicine, all that you go through. You keep it very private.
Absolutely.
And you just deal with that right there under your own roof. God bless you. Thank you for talking to us today. On the last thought, how does faith make such a big difference in your life to get through this?
Oh, faith is everything, right? If without faith, what purpose is there, right? And I have faith that every day God's going to give me a reason to want to get through that day and do it in a happy, peaceful way that I can give back. I'm always, every morning I get up and say, okay, what's good about today? Right? We can get up and find a million reasons to be unhappy, sad, feel bad for ourselves. Focus on something else. Find what it is that can bring joy. Everybody has a problem in their life. Let's focus on those things that can bring us joy.
Oh, beautifully stated. Anne Marie, Cheryl, thank you for being with us today on this edition of Lunch for the Soul. I only wish you the very best, Cheryl, and you take good care of yourself. Anne Marie, great awareness campaign. Thank you. Such amazing women. And I want to make sure you join me next week. I have another dramatic story to share with you. Talk about a journey. We're going to be talking to a couple who drives all the way from South Dakota to Florida with their little boy who needed life-saving and changing brain surgery. And all of that's going to take place next Wednesday, right here, same place, same time, 12:30. Now, I want to make sure you know, if you happen to join us late today, perhaps, you can always go to our YouTube page any day of the week. Fox 26 Houston is what you're going to be looking for. Look up Lunch for the Soul there. You can find past ones if hopefully you've been inspired, hopefully you've learned something, and share it with your family and friends. Bless you. Thank you for being here. You know I love having you here, and I hope that you will continue to join us every Wednesday for Lunch for the Soul. If you happen to have an idea, I hope that you'll send it to me. You can always email me, melissa.wilson@fox.com. Have a good day.